Alright class, let's finish up our notes that we have for today. Problems number 7 and problem number 8. Problem number 7 and problem number 8 are a little bit different than the first 6 that we've done, especially the last 4, problems 3, 4, 5, and 6, when we've actually practiced completing the square. Each and every one of those could also be factored. So that would obviously be the quicker way of doing it. Completing the square is a little bit more lengthy way. But 3, 4, 5, and 6 could be factored. 7 and 8, you guys can try to factor 7 and 8 until you're blue in the face, and you will never ever get factors. They can never be factored down. The only way to solve is by completing the square. So that's what we're going to do for problem number 7 now. My coefficient is 1 in front of my x squared, so that's good news. It makes it much, much simpler. So I have x squared plus 2x plus a blank. That equals a negative 19 plus a blank. Remember, you want your x squared and your x term on the left side and all your constants on the right side. Now, to find what goes in the blank, what I need to do is I need to take b and divide it by 2 and square it. b is 2, so 2 divided by 2, that quantity squared. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. If I add 1 to the left side, I also have to add 1 to the right side. Now we have x squared plus 2x plus 1. That trinomial factors into x plus 1 times the quantity x plus 1, which is the same thing as saying x plus 1 quantity squared. Notice how my first term in my binomial is the x. The sign in between my binomial is the same as the sign in front of b. And then my second term in the binomial is the same thing as b divided by 2, or 2 divided by 2, which is this positive 1 right here. So that is how I get my binomial, and that relationship happens every single time. So I have the binomial x plus 1 quantity squared. That equals a negative 19 plus 1 is a negative 18. Now that I have my binomial squared on the left side and my number on the right side, I solve for x first by taking the square root of both sides. After taking the square root of the left side, I'm just left with the quantity x plus 1. After I square root the right side, I end up with the plus and minus. Now notice, class, this 18, negative 18, can be simplified. It's the same thing as 9 times 2 times a negative 1. I now ask you, what's the square root of 9? You say 3. The square root of 2, you can't simplify that. And the square root of a negative 1, hopefully you remember the square root of a negative 1 is I. So I could take 3i outside the radical, and what is left inside the radical, it is 2. So x plus 1 equals plus and minus 3i square root 2. And then my last step here, let's get x all by itself. Let's subtract 1 from both sides. So my answer is x equals a negative 1 plus and minus 3i square root 2. This is your answer for problem number 7. And the last one for the day, problem number 8. I want to get the x squared and the x on the left side all by itself. So it's 2x squared plus 4x equals a positive 7. I add 7 to get it onto the right side. Now, hopefully this sticks out like a sore thumb now. You have a coefficient other than 1 in front of your x squared. If that happens, you have to bring that out in front, or you have to factor that out in front. So I have 2 times the quantity x squared plus 4 divided by 2 is 2x plus a blank equals 7 plus a blank. Alright, my next step is to find what goes inside the blank. And what goes inside the blank is b divided by 2 quantity squared. b divided by 2 is 2 divided by 2 quantity squared. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So I have a 1 that goes in this blank. Remember, class, you didn't add 1 to the left side. You added 1 times 2. And 1 times 2 is 2. So if you added 2 to the left side, you have to add 2 to the right side. Alright, now going on further. I still have my 2 on the outside. I'm now going to have a binomial squared. That binomial is going to be x, the sign in front of b, which is positive, and this number, the second term in my binomial, is b divided by 2. And b divided by 2 is 2 divided by 2, which is just a positive 1. 2 times the quantity x plus 1, that quantity squared, that equals a positive 9, because 7 plus 2 is 9. Once I have my binomial squared, I now solve for x first by dividing both sides by 2. So I get x plus 1 quantity squared. That equals 9 halves on the right side. Now I have to square root both sides to solve for x. So as I square root both sides, the exponent on the left side disappears, and I am just left with x plus 1. Class, remember how we simplified a radical? For on the right side, we have the square root of 9 halves, which is another way of writing this is the square root of 9 divided by the square root of 2. Now as we simplify this, the square root of 9, I know what that is, and I think all of you know what that is. X plus 1 equals 3 divided by the square root of 2. Remember, class, your denominator has to be a rational number. The square root of 2 is irrational. It is a decimal number that goes on forever and ever and ever. So we have to rationalize our denominator in order to solve for x. So let's multiply both bottom and top by the square root of 2, because that would take care of my irrational number in the denominator. So I still have x plus 1 on the left side. X plus 1 equals 3 times square root 2 is just 3 square root 2. And then square root 2 times square root 2 is the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is just 2. And my last step is going to be x equals, I subtract 1 from both sides, so it's a negative 1. Oh, I forgot my plus and minus. Stink. Up here I should have had plus and minus the square of 9 halves. Plus and minus the square of 9 divided by 2. Plus and minus 3 divided by the square root of 2. Plus and minus 3 square root 2 over 2. And so my last one is x equals a negative 1 plus and minus 3 square root 2 divided by 2. I hate making mistakes. So my answer is x equals a negative 1 plus and minus 3 square root 2 over 2. One last warning before I let you work, class. On a test, I will certainly accept this as a correct answer. Excel Math might have one thing different, and that thing that they might have different is they might want a denominator of 2 for the whole right side of the equation. So if I have x equals, if I have a denominator of 2, they might say instead of a negative 1 here, this would be a negative 2 plus and minus 3 square root 2 over 2. Notice how this blue answer and this green answer are the same thing, because a negative 2 divided by a positive 2 is still a negative 1. I made a mistake there. Shoot! Erase this. Act as if nothing ever happened. What I meant to say here is they want a denominator of 2 sometimes. I hate messing up. So we have x equals, if I want a denominator of 2, my first term would be a negative 2 plus and minus 3 square root 2. These two are the exact same thing, because notice how a negative 2 divided by a positive 2 is still a negative 1, and then 3 square root 2 divided by 2 is still 3 square root 2 divided by 2. So on a test, I would probably just leave your answer like this, just because that's easier, and I would accept that right on a test. Just be aware of Excel Math. If you don't see this answer, try to get a denominator of 2 for the whole expression here on the right side. And if you did that, you would end up with this blue circle right here. I hope that makes sense. I apologize for screwing up like that. So, you have 3 objectives for homework for today. Objectives 79, 80, and 81. I will be available after school class, so if you have any questions on the lesson for today, or if you need any Excel math printed off, I invite you to come after school today, and we can get that taken care of at that time. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day.